Let me welcome everyone who is here. I'm so pleased to see so many young people and that are here. These are young readers, young leaders. Let me give you a round of applause for you, for taking time to attend some important things that will enhance your knowledge, your understanding, your leadership, talent. It's very, very important with what you're doing. You're investing in your future. So I'm very, very pleased. Let me also welcome everyone online. Let me apologize for starting late. With load shedding, things get a little bit out of kilt. So we are now ready. We're starting, and we are in a very important session of ULP Authors Forum. Very happy about this forum, by the way. And let me tell you a little bit of story, because that affirmed that we should be doing this all the time, especially here in Africa. Last week I was in Portugal, and I attended a business schools leaders conference in Lisbon. And you know that they took us out for a visit, like a tourist area. And they showed us part of Lisbon, and then they took us to this square, which honors the heroes of Portugal. And who was honored the most there? Mr. Vasco da Gama. He had a huge stage there. He was a hero, and all they call them navigator heroes. Guys, they tell the story of how they went to South America and both Spanish and Portugal. And one day they decided they'll divide Spain into two. Spain will take other part. And then they talk about how they were heroes coming to Africa and discovering us, as if we were not there. And I was listening to this tourist guide, and she was telling it with such glee and such excitement, telling the story that these people are heroes. What they didn't tell is the harm they did in Africa, the colonization in Africa, the genocide, and the taking off for the land. But it once again reaffirmed in my mind that it depends who writes the story. Who writes the story? The one who writes the story is the one who actually glorifies, as we always say, until the lions can write the stories, we'll always glorify the hunters. And that was, for me, it was so visible. I mean, I listened, I said to my dear God, I mean, when we think of Vasco da Gama, we think of this guy who came and colonialized us. I mean, in Mozambique, Angola, the pain that has been created here. But for them, it's a great hero. It's big statues, even the colonial decolonialization. They talk about colonial heroes that fought in Mozambique, that fought in Angola. And I realized, yes, we need to write our stories, young people, because if we don't gonna change that, we're going to be hearing these stories. So can you imagine all these tourists all over the world told about these stories? And so Europe write the story about us. They write it in their way they want to write it. And we need to write our stories. And that's the reason why we are here. So I'm even more convinced and convicted that this program must continue, and it must be spread throughout the whole continent so that we can be able to write our own stories. Okay, thank you very much. That's why clap hands for confidence. He's leading this whole initiative, ULP Authors Forum. He's our moderator. Does not need any further introduction. You've met him. He visited you. Some of you, how many are from Tembisa? Let me see. That's Tembisa. And then so Shambuve also here. He's here. Wow, that's very great. Then thank you everyone who is here, and confidence has come, visited you and the Young Leaders program. And again, I want to welcome everyone who's online. Let me just again introduce my friend, and my elder brother, I look up to him particularly in areas of character, credibility, more importantly, in areas of marriage. You've been married for how many years now?
40.
40 years. Let's do that. Some of you are not born, not even thought of by that time. So I'm coming close to him because I've been married for 36 years. So, yeah. And we share a lot, and we belong in a number of forums. But let me tell you about him. I'm going to read his CV. Normally, I don't read his CV in great detail, but I'm going to read it in great detail today so that you, as a young person who's here and who's listening online, and everyone, other people who are listening online who couldn't come here because of the COVID situation, it's important to know Martin Kuscus. Emerged as a rare breed of credible leaders that shaped South African democratic landscape. He was a former MEC of Finance in the Northwest Provincial Government, which is currently now called My King. From 1994 to 2004, 10 solid years. Not a single scandal, not a single corruption when he was a MEC of Finance. What you read in Zondo Commission, what you see is happening right now is devastating. You must be hurt beyond measure when you see what's happening there. But you lay your foundation. That is why here. Prior to that, he spent 7 years in the nursing profession. So he's a professional nurse. So if you're sick, look, he'll sort you out. And this was arguably the most important formative years in his life that prepared him for his future leadership assignment. In June 2004, he became the CEO of South African Bureau of Standards, very important organization in South Africa, especially if you're in manufacturing and everything that we have here. Whatever equipment, it must pass through the SABS. Very important organization. A position he held until 2009, and then he started his own business ventures in telecoms, information, technology, and human capital. So ranging all the way from political, nursing, businessman is very important. But this is the part that I like reading about Martin. Mr. Martin Kuscus was also the chairperson of the first board of trustees of the Government Employee Pension Fund, overseeing a portfolio of 890 billion rand. You can't even imagine that kind of number. The seventh biggest pension fund in the world by then. In June 2005 to July 2009, he was chairing that, the pension fund. During this tenure, he was instrumental in establishing a Pan-African Development Fund, which was amounting to 675 million US dollar, not rand, US dollar. You've got to multiply by 14 or 15 to understand the kind of number we're talking about here. And served as a chairperson from 2007 to 2007 and to 2009. From June 2006 and 2009, he served as on a PRI board, a United Nations Compact Initiative on Principle of Responsible Investment. If you were here many years ago, some few years ago, he's been here telling the story how he was meeting with all the United Nations leaders, particularly the Secretary General of that time. This is a very important initiative, this principle of responsible investment. And as a young person, responsibility is very important, and business is very important. Here he gained intensive exposure to international best practice on corporate governance, the intricacies of global capital markets, and optimization of the investment value chain. In September 2006, he was elected for a 2-year term in the Council for International Standards Organization, based in Geneva, the highest authority for industrial standards in the world. In September 2004, the president appointed him for a 5-year term for the Financial and Fiscal Commission, where he gained vast learning experience in public policy, analysis, and intergovernmental fiscal relations. From 2009, he was a vice president. He was also a vice president, and in 2009, 2011, elected president of the AHI, which is a chamber of commerce, Afrikaanse Handelse Institute, which was by then one of the biggest chambers in South Africa. I'm going to pause there because that's long. It will take me the whole day to finish. He's qualified business person and a very educated man. He's got a BA from UNISA, and a postgraduate diploma in company direction, and advanced program in narrative and pastoral counseling from the University of Pretoria. He's attended a number of programs all over, including the Kennedy School of Government in Harvard University. So the person you're going to listen to now is a man of integrity, but also experience and worked hard. And that's what ULP is about. And I'm glad that you, especially the young people, that for this event in particular, is that you will know what we stand for, when competent and ethical leaders. Let me stop there and hand it over to you. Let's welcome Martin.
Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for Prof. Khadev as well? Where there is no leadership, there is no vision. But if you see a vision thriving, you must know that there is leadership there. And this vision is thriving because of the kind of leadership we have. So thank you, Ntate. Mr. Ntate Martin.
Yeah.
Ntate Martin. I remember our first telephonic conversation. I was very careful not to say your surname. And then you mentioned to me that your surname is one of the most butchered surnames in the whole of South Africa. So I think it's a good point of reference to start. Is it Kuscus? Is it Kuscus? Is it Kuscus?
Stop it there. That's the butchering stuff.
That's the butchering. I'm sure you've heard all of them. So just on record today, can you give us the proper so that we know what to call you from now?
My name is Martin Kuscus.
Kuscus.
Now, the surname is a boutique surname, okay? It's not your ordinary surname.
Yeah.
It's very unique.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that. Let's go straight into the book, Ntate. So the title is Credibility Matters. And when we hear the word credibility, I think all of us have some idea of what it could mean. But you, as the author, can you give us your definition as it relates to the character of the book?
Let me also first thank Professor Khadebe and yourself, Confidence, for the platform that you've created for me to share some views with you tonight. I've got fond memories of this place. I haven't been here physically for years. I've done an online function last year for you. But I remember the last time we spoke here was with the late Kolani Gwala. Yes. It's the last time we were here, and I'm glad to see that the vision is still continuing, and I want to commend you for that. Coming back to the subject of credibility, we're having a crisis in the world, and that's a crisis of credible leadership. Our leaders are no more trusted, they're no more believed, they're no more respected, they're no more admired. And you know, whatever they say, we always take it with a pinch of salt, because what they pronounce on and how it plays out in reality is always at variance with each other. Yeah. And the word credibility comes from the Latin word credere, which means to be believed. Now, if you live a life of credibility, you are a believable person, not so much on what you say, but how you conduct yourself.
So it's about the character of the person.
The character of the person. It speaks of somebody when that person appears on the scene. Yeah. There's no questions asked. People know what they're in for. There's almost an expectation of a certain level of performance and conduct that is in line with acceptable standards.
Prof. Hadebe briefly mentioned Zondo Commission, and every other week we see headlines where leaders are falling from grace. Where do you believe the problem is? Why is it that many or some of the leaders that are rising to the top end up falling? Where is the missing piece of the puzzle as they rise to the top?
I think there are two issues at play here. We've come a long way, and we've been endowed with the founding fathers of our democratic dispensation were visionary leaders, but they also carried with them a lot of moral credentials. And we did not latch on, because you see, leadership is not only taught, leadership is also caught. And a lot of us did not caught on to that spirit. No sooner they hardly departed from the scene, we discovered, no man, there's something else that we can gain out of this democratic dispensation. And we veered into the direction of greed, self-interest, and those sort of things. And I ascribe it to two causative factors. The one is apathy. We as the led simply became disengaged, disinterested, and we accepted mediocrity as the norm. We didn't hold people accountable in the manner that they should have been held accountable. The second causative factor, I think, is a thing called political correctness. Some of us are so beholden to the leadership, and I'm not only talking politics, even in business and so on, that we don't want to upset the apple cart.
Yeah.
We rather keep quiet and we allow things to go on because we don't want to cause ructions here. Now that has become a general trend. It's apathy and political correctness. And over a passage of time, we've slipped and we've reached a point now, if we don't reverse this tide, this is what our younger generation is going to inherit. They're going to see that, okay, to get to the top, no hard work involved. I buy a whole branch of a political party, find my way into the BEC, find my way into the council, find my way through the REC into the provincial legislature, find my way into the PEC and become an MEC. It's as easy as that.
Wow. I want to backtrack a little bit and go to the roots. In the book, you speak about, the old African adage that says, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
But you turn it around and you say, but who raises the village?
Yes.
I want to make it a little bit more personal, and I want you to talk about your personal village. As Prof. Hadebe alluded to, we've got quite a number of young people in the crowd. So in your upbringing, who were the villagers and elders that helped to raise Mr. Martin Kuscus?
I was so blessed by, in our days, there was a very strong communal spirit. Materialism was not so pronounced in our communities. We all were very poor people. And if you were rich, you would have had at least these stop-nonsense fences, then you were regarded as rich.
Yeah.
And your gate would open with a spring. And people know.
Yeah.
And if you've got a telephone in your home, you're in a different level. Otherwise, we all, we ate out of the same pot, and we shared lunch and all those sort of things. But I had a few very strong role models, and starting at home, my mom. She instilled in us she was a strong disciplinarian, instilled in us strong godly values and so on. And my mom is no more here, but I'll forever be thankful. There were teachers, that saw the good in me, that supported me. Those were also the days when they see you misbehave. You are the child of the village.
Yeah.
That uncle will clap you. He will sort you out, and you will not come back and, Uncle so-and-so has done this to me. We're going to take him to... No. your dad will take you to the uncle again, and it will be round 2.
Yeah. Amazing.
We walked straight there, you know, and there was respect. Even when I was becoming older, those days I used to, like the Babylonian waters as well. And, from time to time, I will be a little bit out of order. But when I see some of my teachers, immediately I will stand up straight to look for the nearest pole to support me. That level of respect was there. And these are the role models. Then obviously in the spiritual environment, right from Sunday school, and even the years when I was out of church for 14 years, there were always people that I looked up to and desired to be like they are.
Wow, wonderful. One of the things I really loved about your book is how transparent and authentic you were with the stories. And many times the people that we look up to, our heroes, they tend to hide their scars. And so we look at them when you think, these are perfect beings, these are people who've never made mistakes, these are people who didn't go through anything. But in your book, you're very transparent. You show your scars in quite a vulnerable manner. And one of the things you talk about was your dad leaving the home. I think you're about 12 years old. What effect did his leaving the household have on you and your upbringing?
Confidence, that was one of the most traumatic experiences. I was by then in standard 9, grade 11, when Dad walked out on us. But my mom insisted that I must finish off matric, and lo and behold, she even pushed me to go to varsity. My dad was the elder in the church. And I couldn't believe how could, all the things that he stood for, how those things just fell apart, and he just walked away from us. I was angry with God. I didn't put my foot in a church for 14 years.
Wow.
This thing was just too heavy for me.
Yeah.
And it had a traumatic experience on me for years because I'm the eldest at home. And all of a sudden, I've been launched in a position of authority for which I wasn't prepared. There was not the steady hand. I mean, it was also turbulent years. I'm a teenager and so on. The steady hand of an elder, to carry me through.
Yes, sir.
My mom tried her best, but I went through that experience. And my dad was away, only to rock up in 1998 at my mom's funeral. Briefly appeared there, and he was gone again. And we tried to reach out to him, but, very evasive, until we cornered him at his place here in El Dorado Park. And we started to build a relationship. But I recall it was on Father's Day. I was ministering at a church in El Dorado Park. I didn't invite him to church. I thought he's going to his own church, but I promised after church I'm taking you to lunch. And lo and behold, as I was standing on the platform, there was my dad on the left-hand side with his black suit, red tie, and white shirt. He was a short guy, and I got so excited.
Yeah.
When I saw him, I acknowledged him, and he stood up and so on, went for lunch, and we came back. And as he walked me out of his house, we stood there, and he held my hands that day. And I said, I've been watching you for a couple of times now, ministering the Word of God. You've really been graced with the gift of teaching the Word of God. Excel in that grace. I'm proud of you. I almost broke up because what I've been yearning for years, the affirmation of my dad, I saw it for the first time.
Wow.
So, and it happened coincidentally on a Father's Day.
Father's Day, wow.
So I want to tell, some of you might be sitting here, also angry. Where's my dad? Might not even know it. God is a way of turning things around. And after that, we were tight for 17 years. We buried him in a dignified way in 2018 after a very courageous battle with cancer and so on. But we became the best of friends. And up till today, I still miss that opportunity whenever I visit his house. We must first pray. And he pronounced God's blessing over me whenever I'm there. And you know, this is how God brought us together again. So, young man, young woman, don't give up. God knows your heart, and he will place people on your path that will fill that gap. But at the right time, God might work things out that you'll be reunited with your Father again. He's done it in my life. I trust he will do it for you as well.
Amen. So we're going to be taking questions a little bit later. So if any questions arise in your heart, in your mind, please just jot them down and we'll tackle them a bit later. That goes for the online audience as well. You can type your questions on our YouTube platform and we'll tackle them. It is said that no matter how good of a dancer you are, at some point you have to leave the stage and give others a chance. Why is it particularly in Africa? I guess it's a global problem, but want to focus it to Africa. Why is it so hard for many leaders to pass on the baton to, especially in Africa up north, a lot of leaders, they die in the president's chair. But it's something that's prevalent within society, in public, in private entities. Why is it so hard for leaders to let go of power?
You know, power is a very subtle habit of getting hold of your heart and your mind and letting go of it. It's not always that easy. I've learned at an early age of my leadership journey that I always treat any leadership position as rented space. I don't have a title deed over it. Which means when the rental contract expires, I vacate the place and I move on. And other people, you know, they plant trees there next to the flag, they paint the walls one color, and, you know, knock stuff in there, and the next thing there's even a little back room there. And so it's rented space. It's not the owner. And that's how we must treat leadership as well, as rented space. The best example that we can ever set, and I had the privilege to sit in that conference in Mafeking, 1997, when Nelson Mandela handed over to Thabo Mbeki the reins of the African National Congress, which was de facto, the handing over of power to a new order that day. I mean, nobody would have faulted Madiba to stay on for another term. But he chose to do one term, and he set the example. And he did much more even after that through the Nelson Mandela Foundation and so on, the influence that he still had on society. So you don't need to hang on. You need to prepare for that day, because there is a time to come and there's a time to go. And your continued presence can actually hold the organization back. Because sometimes you are there just to fix things, consolidate, and somebody else must take it to the next level. And by you staying on, that company is basically in maintenance mode and it can't go to the next level. As Jim Collins liked to say, good is the enemy of great. You might feel good about how things are run, but it's not a great place. It can have much better. There's much greater potential in that company, but you're holding back because you don't want to go.
Amazing. One of the other things I like about the book is how open and transparent you are about your spirituality. And, there's a quote I like that says, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. And there's a particular incident with a train that almost led to you being crippled, that incident might have led you not to be here in the stature that you are. Can you tell us a little bit about that and put in the details, please?
You want the details?
I want the details.
This is the back page of the newspaper. They were Shwashi and those kind of people. I was 1974, I was at the University of Western Cape. I went there to study for a BA and to become a teacher, And it went well the first semester. But towards towards the first semester, I got a weekend job at the liquor supermarket.
Yeah.
Now, those days, apartheid was rife. They had what they call off sales for black people there. And the white folks could go into the supermarket and shop and put in their trolleys and so on. And I had a weekend job there, Friday afternoons and Saturday mornings. And our job was just to be at the till, unpack the liquor, put it whatever, and push it out in the trolley to the parking bay. And I mean, people who drink are normally generous and they tip you and all sort of things. I used to earn 12 rand a weekend, but on a good weekend, if you get about 10 rand worth of tips, 22 rand in 1974, that was serious money. I lived a royal life on campus.
Yeah.
Then we discovered, no, there's a gap there in the logistics system that we need to exploit. Because they had a roster where, you know, it's your dry weekend, you must go and work in the off sales, there are no tips there. We saw a gap there. And I tell you confidence, me and my friend Farid, we even volunteered to work permanently. They gave us 3 rand increase now, we got 15 rand a week.
Yeah.
We forfeited the tips, but we stole liquor like nobody's business. I became the official Shabin of Western Cape University. If the hockey club has a function, speak to Martin.
But, yeah.
If the rugby club is going, I was like royalty
Martin, yeah.
on campus.
Yeah.
My academic performance took a bit of an,
Yeah.
I just made it towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, come the 24th of November, it's time to come home. And those days it was the Trans-Karoo Express.
Yeah.
It only had one coach for non-white people in the front, second class. The rest of the train was for white people. There was no third class for black people. And the coach was booked out with UWC students because everybody wants to travel with Martin. It's going to be stock, you know. And the ladies made sure there's enough barrels of Kentucky and all sort of things. And there we went.
Yeah.
Hey, and we drank up a storm there. And Marvin Gaye was playing the whole, let's get it on. You know that song called, let's get it on. Then after midnight, disaster struck. I just discovered the next morning, I was lying next to the railway line. What's happening here? I can't even raise myself up, you know. My head is, you know, the pain hits me every movement I make. My leg is broken. Hey, it's bad, it's bad. Where am I? Yeah. Now, I haven't prayed for a couple of months now.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you pray heavy
The spirit,
prayer.
Yeah.
And, you know, the tears.
Yeah.
You know, God forgive me and all this. Heavy prayers.
Yeah.
You call on the God now of Abraham, Jacob. You go via the Red Sea, all those sort of I didn't know where I was. I couldn't release myself.
Yeah.
Middle of nowhere in the Karoo, next to a place called Richmond. Ultimately, as a train passed, I raised my hands and screamed, and well, these guys couldn't stand still. And the next thing, they reported the next station, ultimately came to help me, ambulance picked me up and so on. And I was taken to hospital, stayed there for 6 days, a crack in my skull. So I've got a bit of a funny streak at time, blame it on the accident. And I recovered, but on my crutches, you know, life went on. I'm in the parties and everything.
Yeah.
Until there was a judicial inquiry, because, you know, the railway was afraid I mustn't come and claim against him later on if anything happens. And they discovered that Martin thought that he's open, because the toilet doors in the trains can be confusing, you know, it wasn't far. He thought he's opening up the toilet door, and he opened up outside door, and he walked out of the tray. And I mean the Transkaroo, né? That thing moves. And fortunately, you know, as I moved out, when I was knocked out. They estimate that happened about 1 o'clock in the morning, which means for about 5-6 hours I was lying unconscious there. Yeah. That's all God's grace.
Amen.
You can imagine.
Amen.
I would have perhaps lost my limbs. I might have been on a wheelchair. I might have been, you know, mentally affected by all these type of things.
Yeah.
But God had his hand on me. And that's why I love God so much, you know. I can't help serving God because, and I didn't immediately repent after that, I mean. But God had a way of getting me. Yeah. There was still stock to be finished. Because I sent a couple of boxes from Cape Town on the train.
Amazing, amazing. And, you know, I love it when you talk about the grace of God because, you know, I think all of us need it. And, you know, so sad, especially with the youth, where you find these young people, they got drunk, they drove somewhere and they collapsed and they died. Or they get drunk, get into sexual intercourse and then disease and then pregnancy and all of that. What is your word to the young people especially with regards to that kind of lifestyle, that kind of risky lifestyle, if there are some who are engaged in this particular type of lifestyle?
All I can say, not all of us will be that lucky to get out of there. Yeah. I buried quite a few of my friends. Some of them were stabbed dead right in my presence. Some of them through accidents and those sort of things. It was just God's grace that kept me. So, you know, don't even risk going that route. Yeah. We've been there, it doesn't work. Yeah. It's about, you know, for you to thrive in this life, surround yourself with the right company and pursue your God-given dreams and vision through the application of discipline and all those sort of things. Yeah. But, you know, I'm not propagating a holier-than-thou kind of attitude. Yeah. Have fun. And being Christian, you can have fun, okay? But there are certain risky things that we sometimes, you know, when alcohol and drugs and those things crops in, it takes you through the limit and you don't know whether you'll return or not.
Yeah, 100%. Prof. Khadebe mentioned that you qualified as a nurse.
Yes.
And
I was there for 17 years.
17 years.
He said only 7 years.
Well, it took 10 years away. But, you know, as a man going into the nursing profession, I imagine in those days it was not as common.
No.
Even today, some people still frown upon it. Why did you choose to go against the current and say, this is the profession that I'm going to aspire and go into?
I was actually there, you know, out of curiosity. I was admitted in hospital and I saw these guys, they look so intelligent with their white uniform, and injection, needles, and, you know, and they speak in big words there. Yeah. And I was unemployed by that time. I was retrenched here at Dorbal. I used to work at Dorbal, so I went back home to Klerksdorp. I was retrenched, so I asked, how do I get in? They said, no, if you've got matric, 3 years, and then you can qualify. I tell you, with my bandaged arm, I went to see the matron. I walked in there, Mrs. Rakumako said, can I help my child? So I want to be a nurse. Are you serious? Come here, my child. This is not a job. This is a calling. And Mrs. Rakumako, such a nice motherly talk, you know. And I got in, I filled in forms, later on supplied my documentation. In about 4 weeks' time, I was asked to come 1st of March, 1977. I joined and I finished off there in 1994, moved through the ranks of a student, and then became a professionalist. But initially, you know, people thought, no, this guy just wants to be there because there are a lot of girls there. You know,
Yeah.
But this thing just got hold of me.
Yeah.
There's something about that profession. I don't know now. I'm talking about those years, you know. There was just something about that profession, the humane side of it. Seeing somebody coming in a bad shape and leaving there recovered.
Wow.
You can't describe that feeling.
That's powerful.
Going through an emergency thing with somebody had a heart attack and that person recovers, revives again. You can't describe that feeling.
Amazing, amazing. Being in that profession, especially in that era, exposed you to the brutality of the apartheid regime, because you'd find somebody who was caught by the police, caught by the army, and they come into the hospital in a very bad state. Tell us about that particular aspect of that profession and the journey that it took you into politics.
Those were terrible days, Confidence. Those were the days of where, a state of emergency, where there were a lot of restrictions placed on the movement of black people. And the comrades were hot there in the township. It's the civic movement took root in the townships, ran boycotts and all those sort of things. And they will go in and they will just shot randomly at people, as if they're hunting animals. And you work in casualty, you see this old lady, who was just going to the shop, and she just happened to be part of the crowd. She's been shot. And later on, you start attending funerals of colleagues, relatives. And, these funerals are charged with a lot of raw emotion and hurt and pain. It does something to you. It instills in you that desire to take action. And increasingly, I got sucked into township politics.
Yeah.
Now, I was very strategic, I don't know how to throw a petrol bomb. That's not but which policeman will stop a nurse in his uniform, in a yellow cadet? That was my first car. Policeman will not stop me.
Yeah.
But behind, there will be a lot of posters that must be delivered to the comrades.
Wow.
That's how.
Undercover.
My uniform, doing all these strategic responsibilities.
Yeah. Wow.
But over time, I stayed in a colored area. Let's be honest, colored folks had much more privileged positions, school-wise, housing-wise, and all those sort of things. But that was the crumbs that the white men served them, and they thought it's the whole loaf.
Yeah.
We wanted the loaf. As a matter of fact, we wanted the bakery.
Yeah.
And these guys are happy with the crumbs. And I started sensitizing my community, about all these things. And I started a civic movement there. I led the first rain boycott there, and it was tough. My boy will show you scars. The reactionary guys threw petrol bombs into our room, and my boy caught fire and all sort of things. And these were tough days, and you are not considered for promotion at work because they knew now by then you operated with the comrades, but they couldn't beat me on performance. No, there I was good at my game. So that's how I got, and my mentors, the late Sylvia Benjamin, Henry Moleme, those kind of guys. I started working with them, and that's how the ANC took note of me, and during the election, because I didn't emerge somewhere. I was rooted there.
Yeah.
I was rooted there.
Doing the hard work.
Yes.
Your wife, we've been married for 40 years, 40 years. Initially, she wasn't about that political life. She wasn't.
Even till now.
Even till now.
She likes to make noise.
Yeah.
Don't ask her to be involved.
But you speak in the book about how you went to your spiritual mentor, Pastor Tim. Pastor Tim. And he said something quite powerful. He said, if you have no support at home, the support of the crowd will not do you any good. Can you just expound on that? Because I found that to be quite powerful.
It was not an easy decision to go into politics. To be honest, I always regarded politicians as sleazy, fun, guys and I just wanted to be an activist, help people and so on. I didn't aspire for that. And when I was approached by the head of the elections, Comrade Zakes Stoller those days, the ANC wants me to stand for elections, I spoke to my wife about it, and she just brushed it off initially, and she said, let's pray about it. So I went to see my spiritual leader, Pastor Tim Salmon, and he asked me, what does your wife say about it? Is she fully persuaded and convinced that this is the right thing? I said, not yet. He said, Martin, you can have the best crowd backing you up. If your home base is weak, go back and go and talk to your wife first. So I went to speak to Liz, and we cleared this thing nicely out, and I went back to Pastor Tim.
Yeah.
And he said, you just sit down there now. He used to call me Johnny Boy.
Johnny Boy.
That was how my mom called me.
Yeah.
Johnny Boy, you sit down there. Uncle Tim wants to talk to you.
Yes, sir. Just on that.
Uncle Tim said, before you go to Mafikeng, there are 4 things that Uncle Tim needs to tell you today that you need to be aware of.
The 4 P's.
There are 4 P's.
Yeah.
He said the first P is a thing called power. He said you guys never had power. And power has this funny habit to corrupt you if you don't manage it correctly. Be mindful when you go into that power does not control you.
Yeah.
You're not getting consumed by power. The second P that he spoke about was popularity. He said the organization that you're going to represent was formed before you were even born. So don't think that because the crowds love you and you speak nicely and the people are applauding you and so on, that you're much more popular than the cause. It just takes somebody else and they can do the thing even better. So don't let popularity and those things go to your head. The third thing he said, watch for pennies. He said these guys are going to approach you and, with small little things, a pen, gold pen, small gift, and later on, let's go and play golf. And later on, they discover, hey man, you look tired. Don't you want to come to our game farm? We'll fly you down there to wherever the game farm is, and you get sucked in, and later on, they're going to put their request on the table, and you will feel obligated. And that request will not be pennies. It will definitely be pounds. And they'll promise you that you can be part of the pounds as well. And the last one, how many ladies in the house here? This is not a sexist argument, statement. I'm just telling you what my pastor said. He said, beware of petticoats.
Yep.
He said, if you are in high political office, certain guys abuse their position of authority and manipulate females. And, if you're not careful, your opponents might even, once they see you've got appetite for these things, your opponents might even plant some of these people. Yeah. And in your moment of impropriety, they strike. Okay, is it you? We're going to tell or else.
Yeah.
And you'll be in big trouble.
Yeah.
So those 4 P's, that was Uncle Tim's words for me.
Yeah.
And as I went into politics, I saw how this thing of power and popularity, I don't want to talk about dead people here, but during the first term, we had 2 big fights between my premier, Popo Molife, and a guy called Rocky Malabani Metsing. Rocky was more popular than Popo because he's the son of the soil from Bophuthatswana.
Yeah.
People know him there.
Yeah.
He thought he knows better, and was forever until he was out of the party. I've seen how pennies turn into pounds and how guys got almost like a drug addict, sucked into this habit of being spoiled by these guys until they struck.
Yeah.
And as for the petticoats, I will get an appointment, and the comrades would like to see me because they've got a project for the women.
Yeah.
But then later on, when the delegation arrives, it's only the one comrade.
Wow.
Where are the other comrades?
Yeah.
The other one is at the funeral arrangements. Other one has been called to the provincial office, but I'm here now, comrade.
See what to discuss.
And later on, there's no project, it is very vague. But if all comrades were like you, Comrade Martin, you're such an understanding guy.
Wow. Delilah.
Yeah.
Delilah
Now,
coming
you don't
up.
know if this comrade was sent,
Yeah.
because politics is very competitive, You don't know was this comrade sent or not, Comrade, we've got this program. Mr. Chair is the head of their division. Can I ask Vicky to put him in touch immediately? He might be in his office now,
Yeah.
And like Joseph, run, my friend. Run.
Left the coat and...
Yeah, rather leave the coat behind.
Yeah.
And Vicky will sort you out and so on. Because these things have a funny habit, of becoming almost normal.
Yeah.
Professor Debe will tell you, in corporate circles, it's almost normal that we know that so-and-so is the mistress of so-and-so in the office. It's commonly spoken about.
Yeah.
And that does not enhance your credibility.
100%. The finance portfolio goes to Martin Kuscus. Tell us the story behind these words.
Hey, that was another one,
Yeah.
Here we are. We won the election, with the 82% margin. And Saturday, you remember the results delayed. We waited for days for the results. Ultimately, the results pronounced on the Friday and the Saturday. Emergency legislature sitting, and we were sworn in. 3-4 days after that, the Wednesday, Malife called us all into a room. 1.5 hour talk about the challenges, and then the next thing, he announced his cabinet. He read the first, the second name, and these were predictable. These were strong struggle stalwarts, the late O.J. Tsalapedi, Sifularu, and those kind of guys. We all expected them to be in the first cabinet. But when he read number 7, he said the finance portfolio will go to Martin Kuscus. Yeah. I hardly heard the last 3 names. My mind went into this. I had to ask Rihanna next to me, and what are the other people? Yeah. She said, I'm with sports, and congratulations.
Yeah, wow.
I didn't know a debit from a credit. And here I'm called to manage almost 5 billion rand,
Wow.
Talk about faith, Professor Hadebe.
Yeah.
I really needed faith for that.
Yeah.
I even needed faith to have a meeting with Saul Kersner. Because we used to own shares at Sun City those days from the Northwest Development Corporation.
Yeah.
My wife used to pray every day,
Yeah.
And that was a life-changing moment. Unless you have lived and experienced it, it's very difficult to describe to you how I felt that day.
Yeah.
And then you got into office, and all of a sudden people are driving you around. All of a sudden you've got bodyguards. Yeah. Then at your home there's a policeman guarding you.
Yeah.
You've got an official residence. Yeah. Your children are taken to school by these fellows. And everywhere there's protocol, who sits where and what, all those sort of things. Yeah. It took me some time, and every time I had to remind myself, I didn't come to Mabatu for this nonsense. Yeah. No. And gradually, we settled in, and yes, after 2 terms, God was gracious that I could still keep my feet on the ground. And I didn't ride their cars in anywhere. I bought my own car.
Yeah.
They only provided me with a driver.
So
It was more tax efficient.
You speak about the culture within the organization, whether it's public or private. And even in the public sphere, there's a certain culture, there's a current, and you can choose to either flow with the current or flow against it. And one of the nicknames that you got that alluded me to that maybe you chose to go against the current was you were called the hitman. I don't know if you were assassinating people in the party.
No.
Why did they call you the hitman?
No, there was a time when we really went big time after these guys that took money in government, you know. I set up a strong forensic unit that worked with it was the Scorpions. Those guys used to there was a sting in that scorpion, you know, and all the law enforcing agencies, we worked together. And we cornered quite a few crooks there. Unfortunately, some of them were high-level political guys as well. And I was so surprised one time in the Mafikeng Mail that comes out Fridays. The headlines read, Martin, the Hitman, Kuscus.
Yeah.
The Hitman, SC5. But that created problems for me because people thought that I want to commit, political assassinations in the sense I want to prematurely shorten their political careers by all these so-called forensic investigations and so on. Because a few one of the HODs, former MK fellow and so on, used to gamble with our credit card.
Yeah, wow.
He used it as a revolving facility.
Wow.
And he had to go.
Yeah.
These kind of things. So the people wait for you at conference.
Yeah.
And they waited for me at conference.
Yes.
And they sorted me out there.
They wanted to take out the hitman.
They went for the hitman at conference.
Wow. Moving into, well, I guess not so much corporate, but I guess SABS does have a very corporate heavy feel. As the CEO there, you say you found it was almost like a war zone.
Yes.
Literally somebody came in with a gun. Tell us a little bit about that scenario and what your role was in helping to shift that organization.
When I left the Northwest Provincial Legislature, and I found myself here at the SABS, I was excited getting in there. But the excitement, soon I discovered, well, is this a champagne glass? Should I be excited? Or is it a poison chalice? Because when I arrived there, just 2 weeks before my arrival, a guy lost his disciplinary hearing. He came into the campus with a gun as they were busy with the HR clearance process. He came into the campus with a gun. He pretended as if he is going into the supervisor's office to greet. He went in there, pulled out a gun and blasted the supervisor. Pumped a couple of bullets through her, 2 bullets, and he died before. She died 2 days after that. That hospital was still called the Little Company of Mary Hospital in Pretoria. And that's what I inherited when I arrived there. The air was loaded with suspicion, and that was symptomatic of the underlying culture, that was going on there. And through God's grace, when I moved in there, it took me about almost 2 months, 3 months, not saying much, just listening.
Yeah.
Because there were just so many contradictions. We had 12 sites, Cape Town, all those places, to go and find out what's the state of play before I made my next move. And I realized SABS could not face its tomorrow until such time that it dealt with its yesterday.
Wow.
There was just so much hurt, baggage, and stuff that happened there that we must first fix those things. I go and talk to David Malapo, Dr. Ketso Mabusela, and a gentleman called Blackie Swart. Got them in, and we had these focus group discussions. And we challenged some of these strongholds, the racial paradigm, the gender paradigm, the age paradigm. You know, these old engineers, young graduates come in, no, don't tell me anything. We've been doing this like for the last 30 years. Yeah. The regional visitors, head office paradigm, and so on. And discuss what should an ideal SABS look like. We ultimately got consensus, and we sorted all those things out, and we rebuilt that organization. To such an extent, that's how I got elected onto the ISO Council. Yeah. We became a model product on how this thing was transformed, and we raised the standard so much that we were in the top 10 certification bodies when I left there. Wow. I can't say that now.
No. I'm going to invite the audience now. If there's a couple of questions, you just raise your hand, and then, yeah, we'll tackle those particular questions. You received a call from former Minister Trevor Manuel asking you to become the first chairman of the board of trustees for the Government Employees Pension Fund. And as Prof. Hadebe alluded to, I think it was almost worth R1 trillion, 900 billion somewhere there, seventh largest in the world. Was that the biggest challenge you've had up to that point, and how did you face it?
I wouldn't say the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge was definitely transitioning from the nursing profession into finance. Yeah. Coming there, you know, I could understand at least the language of money and those sort of things. But I never expected the quantum to be so big. Yeah. You know, every day on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, between 8 to 12% of all money that's traded there was money from the Government Employee Pension Fund. Wow. Wow. They've got their fingers into everything, Standard Bank, what have you. They've got shares in all these companies, Sasol, everybody. So between 8 and 12%. And, you know, once you realize the awesome responsibility, you managing money here of the old lady that's been a teacher now for the last 30-odd years, the nurse, the policeman, I can't mess up here. Yeah. We must get the best possible return. But what was nice there, you know, was we started from scratch, which means I didn't walk into something that's already been established. So we could co-create something new, something fresh, and also, you know, get the PIC to fall in line, because by that time, the PIC was just, you know, the PIC, you know, and we were actually the owners of the money. It was a beautiful experience,
Wonderful. There's something you mentioned in the book, because I mean, going from 5 billion to 900 billion is a jump. And there's a scripture you quote that if God can trust you with a little, then he will give you much. Can you just extrapolate on that?
Let's go before the 5 billion. Let's go back to my first year in marriage. I spent my first winter in a caravan, a tented caravan. When that caravan got wet and it was rain, we'll put on the heater the whole day to dry it up. Yeah. My poor baby girl, who was a few months old, the caravan was leaking one night, you know, and the droplets fell on her head, and she was crying the whole night. And we took her to my in-laws to go and stay there. Oh. On the 10th of October, 1982, in a small church in my hometown, Klerksdorp, I gave my life to Christ that evening. And I was baptized towards the end of November, and I gave my first tithe the end of November. That same week after giving my first tithe, the Lord moved me out of the caravan into a flat. I spent my first Christmas after 14 years sober. Wow. Yeah. I bought my wife a nice stove with the oven. You know, she even cooked this meat. You know, this one with the no man, that one. It's got these strings. The strings, you know. Yeah. biscuits, everything. Ginger beer, we had Christmas. In my own place there.
Yeah.
And so the Lord led us out of all those things. And that's where I learned, if you are faithful in the small things. I just had a civil servant salary of a few thousand rand, if we put it together. But we were faithful in supporting the work of the Lord and all those sort of things. That's why God could entrust me with a few billion rands in Mafikeng. And when I came to Pretoria, he could entrust me with a few hundred billions of rands. Because if you are faithful in the small things, God can trust you with the big things. If you're unfaithful with the small things, don't come and say, God, I want this, that, and the other. Learn to be faithful first in the small things.
Yeah.
And that's where my journey started. Being prudent with money, with the little that we've had, so that I can be entrusted with doing the greater things out there in the community.
Powerful, powerful. Do you have any questions from the audience thus far? Do you have the roving mic, please?
Yeah, some hands.
All right. Yeah, please stand up, state your name, and then ask your question, please.
Oh, I'm Sam Machavere from Soshangube. My question is to Mr. Martin. What made you to rise after 14 years not going to church, and then you said to yourself, now I'm going back to church?
Yeah, a very good question, Sam. You know, I was brought up in an environment where we believe that the children must, when a child is born, child must be taken to church to be blessed by. Now, my firstborn is now in the house, you know. What are we doing here, you know? So I approached the church, and I will sit at the back row, or the second row from the back, you know. So when the church is out, I don't have to mingle with a lot of people, but at least the pastor saw me from the stage. I was in church. And I didn't approach the pastor myself about the dedication of my baby. My mom did that, you know. And the pastor Smith said, no. My issue is not with Martin and his wife. My issue is with the child. Because Jesus said, suffer not the little children to come. We can't deprive the child of a blessing because your son didn't attend church. Next one is in 2 weeks' time. Tell them they must come. Yeah. And I was also very shy there, bought myself a little three-piece suit. And the child was blessed. But increasingly, Sam, I became comfortable with this church environment. And for some reason or the other, I discovered, you know, it's something, because I grew up in church. It's something that I'm missing, and it's actually great to be back. But I was still going on with my stuff there, you know, but go to church until that Sunday night. Nobody pushed me. Nobody told me you turn or you burn. I was not under threat by my wife, I'm going to divorce you because of this drinking stuff of yours. Nothing of that. The word of the Lord just came to me that evening as if that preacher read my mail, and with the utmost conviction in my heart, I was the first to stand up, walk to there's a red carpet there. You know, it felt like royalty when I walked up there. And I gave my life to Christ. And I never looked back after that. My life, instead of going south, it started progressing to a level of the type of things that I speak about here. And I'm not propagating perfectionism here, Sam. It was a process, you know. I had to unlearn a lot of stuff initially, but I subjected myself to a process of discipleship and, you know, getting into the Word and so on. And increasingly, these type of things just didn't make sense to me anymore. I was pursuing the things of God very vigorously, very vigorously.
Powerful. Next, another question?
I hope that you are in church, Sam.
Hi, my name is Tabo Kekana and I live in Ivory Park. I wanted like to ask you because like I come from a community like where there's like less role models. Ne? So like as me as a young person who wants to be a role model to other children, like what could I do like to become like you? Because like where I come from, there's like less role models because like it's a township and like most of our elders like they smoke, they drink and things. So what can we do as young children to help the other children who's coming behind us?
Very, very powerful question. You know, we always look for this big thing to happen in our environment. And that question was raised to Moses as well. When he was given an instruction to deliver God's children from the bondage of Egypt, the Lord asked him a simple question: what do you have in your hand? And sometimes what we already have can be utilized to turn little by little into the bigger things that we intend to do in our community. You might have a specific skill. The skill might just be that you're good at mathematics. What do you have? I've got sharp mathematical capability. Let's get somebody's backyard in a garage or so, and let's just get the kids out of the streets and have a session with them and help them with their mathematics. Yeah. After that, you bring in life skill lessons, you know, speak about discipline, speak about that flows from the mathematical discussions. And increasingly, you build the confidence to take on bigger responsibility. But you being faithful in that small thing, other people start taking interest in you. And people start saying, what do you need? No, I need a computer. I need this, I need that. But you need to start with what you have. Too many of us want to first have everything sorted out. You've got to start with what you have. And I want to ask you the question tonight: what do you have? God has deposited in each one of us at least some capability. Even if it's a lady in this room that's very good in baking, if that lady can just from time to time get a few girls off the street and show them how to bake a simple cake, that's all that you need to have. You might be good in, sewing or whatever. What do you have? And tomorrow this thing becomes a bigger outfit where more lives can be changed. And people can see that there's an alternative to just running around and doing things that's not productive in their lives. That's how you become a role model. Not on how eloquent you are, but doing the small things, because destiny is determined by being faithful in the small things in life. You want a big car one day? First try and look after the Golf. Make sure it goes to the car wash every week. Make sure that the Golf gets serviced and so on. And don't wish for the Mercedes-Benz if you can't look after the Golf. Because if you can't look after the Golf, maintaining a Mercedes-Benz is going to be a nightmare.
Thank you, sir. Next question.
Did I answer you? Are you covered? I hope if I haven't convinced you that I've at least confused you.
Hello, my name is Dion Mahlang. We come from a community whereby, from the background, our families and our grandparents were raised and they learned how to live through the government. Everything is sponsored by the government, grant and everything. How do we become young people and future leaders that don't depend on the government but learn to be action takers instead of complaining all the time, but be able to take action?
Yeah, that's, that's one of the biggest diseases that's facing our country at the moment. There's almost, and don't get me wrong, there's almost a sense of entitlement what is the government doing? Halima Motlanthe said the other night, we built you an RDP house because you saw some philanthropist build somebody a house with furniture. Then you start asking, but where's my furniture? Why did so-and-so get furniture? You mustn't work like this. Comrades, you mustn't work like that. Where's my furniture? Now, that's going to bring us down, you know. And sometimes this entitlement is going to create big problems. Now, where you are at the moment, you are on very, very fertile soil. This place is called ULP. This is where people are trained to unleash their potential. And one of the strongest driving forces here is to teach people entrepreneurship. Am I correct, Professor?
Yes, you're right.
So that young people, and I've heard many beautiful stories, how people got established in things which they thought wasn't possible.
Yeah.
And some of these things happen even without the help of the government. Am I talking to the right audience?
Yes.
People from ULP.
Yes.
And we must reach a stage now where we take ownership for our own destiny. And you know, if we could, under such impoverished circumstances, rise to the top, how much more you, who's got access to so many opportunities? You just go on the net now. You'll see how many funds are available. And yes, there's bureaucracy. I know that some of these things, but don't give up. The first door that closed must not stall you in your tracks to say, I'm not going to try anymore. I'm going back to stand in the queue for my 350 again. This thing doesn't work. Push on, push on. You raised a very important thing here, and perhaps you need to talk to the ULP people. I don't know how the things work now. Yeah. You have a youth chapter and so on, where you target specifically young people, where they can just open up a total new universe where you can identify opportunities and start working on those opportunities. And instead of you looking for a job, tomorrow you can create the jobs in your community.
Powerful. Next question, and we're drawing to a close quite soon.
Good evening. My name is Benedict Shubane. I'm from Soweto. I've got 2 or 3 questions. In your opening statements, you mentioned that leadership is caught. So in this world full of negativity and with few credible leaders, as young people, how can we then navigate in this kind of looking up to credible leaders and being able to follow the right leaders so that they can actually mentor us? Because I believe in mentorship as we are young people growing up and following our vision. And then the second question, you mentioned quite a very long journey in your life, moving from Mafikeng to SAPS, ISO, and now your dad affirming you that you've got a gift of teaching. In that long journey, how did you know that you were working in your vision? And how did you also stay focused to know that you are actually following your vision? Because as we read in the Bible, where it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And then the last question is, how did you overcome failures in your life? I believe maybe moving from Mafikeng, it might have had some emotional challenges. But then it was a blessing in disguise that you actually were promoted. So as young people coming across failures and challenges, how do we overcome them? Thank you.
Very good questions. Let's start with the first set of questions. I said leadership is not only taught, it's also core. Now, you need to identify for yourself what do you want out of life. And looking in your environment, which people fit the description of the qualities that you're looking for. Now, some people, there are direct mentorships and there are indirect mentorships. You don't need to necessarily, there are people that hardly knows me, but I follow what they're doing. I follow their teachings, I read their stuff, I look at certain things that they do, how they failed and how they've succeeded on those things. That to me is a form of mentorship. But then there's also direct mentorship, where you need to identify somebody with the right motive in your heart. You know, it's not to, I want to be with Professor Hadebe because maybe he will make a plan for me at Wits. You've lost it. You know, these NSFAS people are giving me problems. Now you come via mentorship angle. If your motive is not correct, then you're going to lose it. You must have the right motive. What is it that I want to gain out of the experience of Professor Hadebe, and how will this move me forward in my journey? But mentorship is not always, it's not a permanent thing. There are horses for courses. I've had mentors just for a period of time to get me through a specific phase of my life. I had mentors just for a specific problem in my life. If it is, for example, some of us now have gone through the stage where we are teenagers in our homes, you know. Bratom, there's a lot of grace that goes with that. You know? So you go to people and find out, you know, I saw your teenagers were well, they were settled and so on, and they progress. How did you go about these things? Can we exchange notes? What am I currently doing? Is it the right thing or not? You know? So mentorship is you do the things for the right reasons, but you also make yourself accountable to them. The expectations must be clearly spelled out so that you don't go into that with exaggerated expectations, because mentorship is also not a silver bullet, but you take the best out of the situation and apply it to you. But it's also a mutual learning process. What do you bring to the table? It's not me getting out. It's also, and the way I enjoy the millennials nowadays, you know, I learn so much from them. I don't know about you. They come to me and they speak about this thing nowadays. Can you tell me more about it? You know, I see this new technologies coming out, and they just come into their own. And then I say, no, tone down, no cyber talk now. Explain to me in simple language, how does this thing work? So it's also about mutual learning. So go and look for those people that can add value to your life. And preferably don't go to the brand names, they're too busy. I got mentorship from ordinary men and women, not because of their title, but because of their wisdom, their life experiences. That to me was more important than anything. They've been there, they've done the job. You also ask a question about, what was the second set of questions? The challenges. How did I handle failures and so on? You spell the word fail, it's F-A-I-L, in capital letters. And it's basically an acronym for, it was my first attempt at learning. I didn't fail. If something goes wrong, it was my first attempt at learning. In learning, given a similar set of circumstances, what will I do different? If I don't do anything different after that, then I have failed. But I see every setback as a learning opportunity. First and foremost question that needs to be asked, what have I learned out of this situation? And make learning then, you know, an empowering experience. And you don't go in sackcloth and ashes because you have failed. And this thing of the transition from Mabatu to Mabatu was a terrible place, Astro. They used to call it Santa Barbara. You see, in Mabatu, they thought we are the incomers. We are coming to take the bread out of their mouths. And initially, there was a lot of resistance towards our presence there. But we had to build credibility and show them that we actually here to serve. I mean, some of us, I couldn't say everybody, but some of us. And those that showed, those were the people that actually won the trust and confidence of the people there. And I enjoyed my stay there, man. It's in bad shape at the moment. The president mentioned it on national TV as one of the dirtiest towns in the country. But they get it. They'll get themselves sorted out.
Powerful. We've got 2 questions from our online audience. The first one is from Dineo Molokwane. The question says, being an ethical leader in a corrupt environment must be very challenging. How did you manage to remain ethical in such working environments? What was your anchor?
I'm going to share just one quick story. In 1996, I was in charge of economic affairs. And I was in charge of issuing casino licenses in the Northwest Province. And I became hot property. Everybody wants to have me at F&B Stadium to come and watch. Chiefs and Pirates, there's a festival and all sort of things. There's a golf in Sun City and all sort of things. And it became a very lonely road. But I didn't see this one coming, man. A farmer in my town, Klerksdorp, organized through one of the comrades that I must come and see him because he wants to do a project for the community. So I rocked up there on my way to a funeral of one of my teachers. And the next thing, this guy said, let's just take a drive around the farm. And he took me on a nice little Land Rover and showed me the nice scenery on the farm. And as we arrived at his home on the stoop, the smell of that scones remind me of my grandma's scones, The coffee, everything was in place. And then the real discussion started. The man told me about the RDP. You remember our initial policy document, the Reconstruction and Development? He knew it by heart. People-centered development. And he crammed it, And now we're going to create jobs for the people here. The only problem, he needs a casino license. Wow. And I was halfway through the first scone that time.
They're giving you the pennies.
The first scone. And I ended up with that one scone because my appetite was gone. He reminded me that, I was friends with all the big politicians, Pik Botha and Baron Duplessis and all these guys. When you're in politics, you must cash in whilst there's still time because politics have got a short lifespan. He said, let's plant a little tree and we'll just water it every year with the dividends of the casino. The day when you want to leave politics, there'll be enough fruit on the tree. Every time you can come and harvest. We'll keep a blind trust with the lawyers. Me and you are the only people in the lawyer that will know. I told him in no uncertain terms that I'm not issuing the license. It's a cabinet decision. My department just processed it because the gambling board falls under my portfolio. The adverts will be out in 4 weeks' time. Watch your local newspaper and put in a bid. And as we walked out, I said, by the way, I don't like this Buompi scene. I don't like this Buompi scene. No, I was not meant to offend, and I don't like this Buompi thing. Off to the funeral. Now imagine, I'm young, few years in politics, 2 years in politics, no balance sheet of note. The guy's talking about, all these nice fruits that I can eat in future. If I gave in for that fruit that time, I wouldn't have sat with you here tonight. I wouldn't have written a book called Credibility Matters. I wouldn't have been to all these places at some stage. I even addressed the United Nations General Assembly in a debate on global capital and climate change as part of a panel discussion. I was all over the world that God elevated me to create a testimony so that I can inspire people wherever I go. And I could have shortchanged myself right there. 2 years in politics. That's but one incident. These guys come and brag here. What's his name? The deputy minister. The Guptas gave him 600 million rand. That's nothing in compare with my Boompiet would have been big by now. Boompiet would have been very big by now.
Yeah. Question from Diamond Mutimele. Following up on the question from Dino, how do we entrench leadership credibility in corrupted organizations?
Everything, credibility stands or falls on what is mirrored at the top. It all starts at the top. There's a book even written, I think it's, the author is Barrett or Garrett, A Fish Rots at the Head. If things are rotten at the head, the whole body is going to be in big trouble. Now, if we want to stem corruption, we need to start right at the top. If we want credibility in our homes, it starts with the father of the home. If we want credibility in our schools, it starts with the principal of the school. There are many impoverished schools that produce 100% pass rates in Limpopo, all those kind of places. Not even, they beat all these Model C schools in their vicinity and they get 100% pass rate because of a credible principal there in that school. That maintains order, discipline, and inspire confidence in that place. And so we need to get leadership back that can be trusted, that can be believed, that can be respected and be admired. Unfortunately, it's in short supply, and that's why you're here tonight. That we can just plant the seed in your heart. There is a different way of doing things. Don't let this South Africa be defined by the current situation. We owe it to the next generation to turn this tide. And I've got confidence in, there's a groundswell of support now. I think people are getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. There's just this healthy anxiety now in South Africa that we don't want this nonsense anymore. And we've got to join forces in those ranks and start where we are, as I told you earlier on. When people want to ask for a bribe along the road, you don't. It's not my scene. I don't like this Boompiet thing. I don't like this. Wherever you are, don't take shortcuts.
Dr. Martin, leadership and legacy go hand in hand. What would you like your legacy to be, and what would you like to be remembered for?
My biggest desire in life is one day, when I'm no more there, that people will reflect back and say that Martin made a difference in my life. That Martin made me to believe that I can do things, and he actually accompanied me on that journey to places where I never thought was possible going.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we please give him a round of applause? Dr. Martin Kuscus.
You're doing well.
I got it right. One of my favorite leadership quotes, and I quote it quite a lot, it says, "There is no other form of leadership than example." So thank you so much for being an example that we can follow. And thank you for honoring the invite and coming to talk to us. We've been so enriched tonight. We thank you and we honor you, sir.
No, it was my pleasure, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to welcome our chairman, Prof. Hadebe, to do the closing for us.
Well, let's give Martin Kuscus a round of applause. It's an amazing story. Yeah?
Yeah.
Let me just test you. What does fail mean? That's a good time to shoot. Come. First attempt in learning. That struck me. It's the first time I hear about it. Yeah, that's why I've been in ULP now for the last 10 years. And I always sit here and learn something. First attempt at learning.
Yeah.
So whatever from now onwards, don't be afraid of failing. In fact, I like this. First attempt at learning. And I've got a story of my younger brother who also failed matric. And they tried to go and work, and I said to him, look, that was your first attempt in learning.
Yeah.
So go and rewrite your matric. And it was at St. Anthony's in the East Rand, if those that are in the East Rand. And they rewrote his matric, and he was able to actually get a first class, got a bursary from one of the mining houses, finished his BCom degree, and he became extremely successful. So, if you failed, first attempt in learning. Let's repeat it again.
First attempt in learning.
That's the greatest lesson I've learned today, other than all the other stuff. Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much. Confidence. Thank the entire team. There's Mam Topo, and Nono, and they're all outside, and the entire team. And I really... there's one thing I want to say. Now you're in the ULP family. And if you want to be a mentee, make sure that your name is written there. Because ULP runs, as part, as you said, that we've started a mentorship program with the National Mentorship Movement where we get young people and then we get mentors. You'll be linked to a mentor and then you'll also be linked online. You can be able to ask as many questions as you can, and you can grow and learn, and you can get role model from the. I grew up in Katlehong, you know. Our role models was the guys who was very good in Okapi. Yeah. But we overcame that, and we saw other role models. So be part of this network now. Follow this man, confidence. As he invites you, his main job is to really start the Young Readers, Young Leaders program. So thank you very much. Stay safe, keep your mask again, stay healthy, and may God bless you.